بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So we will now close with this last session. Open the floor to your observations, your questions, your criticisms, whatever you have. So. Yes.
I have a question regarding something you also said at the ritual, which some people wouldn't know. It's that you shouldn't attach yourself to the feeling of the spiritual high, but it's also, and you also emphasize that it's the closest that you get to Jannah. So how do you create that differentiation for yourself, whereas you're not doing it for the feeling, but you're doing it for Allah?
Oh, that's a very good question, mashallah. So, do people hear the questions online?
I'm texting them through
Oh,
online, so
good.
they will read them.
Okay, so I don't have to repeat the question. So that's a really good question. And when you worship God, God is infinitely generous and noble, and He rewards you. And He doesn't just reward you in the next world, He rewards you here. One of the greatest rewards that He gives you is what we call waridat. They are spiritual illuminations. And when you get the spiritual illuminations, they do different things. But one of the things that they most commonly do is they make you feel spiritual. They make you feel a spiritual state, because they make the ruh, which is the most important part of you, very strong, so it dominates you. And so you have a ruhani state. You have a state in which your spirit dominates everything else. And that is the most pleasurable of all states, as we said, and as the sister noted. That is the closest we get to the garden in this world, are those spiritual states. They are most like the states that you will have in the garden, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. As the Habib says in Salatul Muqarrabeen, you throw all others behind your back, and your reward is also other than God. Because God is your mahbub and God is your matlub. And what he means by that really if you're muqarrab, this is what you want. Not even your reward. Even though you will be given your reward, and you certainly don't want to be punished. But there is something much greater than your reward. There is something much greater than the garden itself. And that is for you to be close to the Lord of the garden, the creator of the garden. And if you think that there's pleasure in looking at the trees of the garden, which there is, or the grass of the gardens, or the pearls of the gardens, or the rivers of the gardens, or the birds of the garden, there is. But the greatest pleasure of all is to be witnessing the Lord of the garden who creates those things from nothing by sheer will. So this is your matlub. This is what you're seeking. And in your spiritual life, you will find that sometimes you worship and God gives you the spiritual state. And you are in ecstasy. You are at peace. You are in a wonderful state. But sometimes you worship God, and there's nothing wrong with your worship. Maybe your worship is even, in the eyes of God, more perfect than it ever was before. And He gives you no spiritual state. And this is part of His wisdom of working with you as His Lord, taking you to Him and not to yourself. So that now, it's like, will you still continue to to worship me if you don't get your candy? Will you still worship me if you don't get your bliss? Will you still worship me if maybe you begin to doubt yourself? That maybe there's something wrong with me and my worship? So this is part of the spiritual path. And that's why it's very important for us not to have the false conception of spirituality that is very common in our time, where people worship for spirituality. They want to be spiritual. They want to feel spiritual. They want to do spiritual exercises to get a spiritual high. Meditation or whatever, prayer, whatever. But, we are seeking something much higher than me, and much higher than what I feel, and much higher than my happiness. And that is to know God, and to love God, and to be devoted to God, and to witness God, and to think about God. Whether He gives me candy or not, whether He gives me spiritual nourishment or not. And, to answer the sister's question, usually the way that you go through this is from your Lord, because this is one of the stages of spiritual development. It is one of the tests. That now you do the dhikr, which you found so intoxicating for so long, and nothing happens. And you pray the prayer, and it's as if nothing happens. I don't get that feeling that I got before. And this is where you need to be strong, and you need to use your mind, and you need to think of your Lord, because He is testing you now in order to bring you to a higher state, so that you worship Him for Him and not for you. That's what He's doing. And He will probably give you back soon a higher spiritual state. But He will remove them to see, would you now worship me for nothing? Would you now worship me because you know me? Because you love me? Because then you are truly my servant. And that's why it's said that the awliya are much more happy in qabd than they are in basta. And qabd is contraction. Qabd is when you don't have what you want. You're hungry, you're in pain, you're sad, you were deprived, you lost your friend, you lost the thing you wanted. Maybe you got really sick, maybe your back hurts, your stomach hurts. That's qabd. And the awliya are very happy with that, because now I worship you for you, and I don't get much of a reward for this, and that's good. And also it's easy for me to have adab. Whereas in bast, which is expansion, when you're given beautiful spiritual states, and you had this incredible dream last night, and you prayed, and then you saw beautiful dreams. And our brothers and sisters do, the believers do. And then, things went right for you, and everything worked out, the things you wanted all came about, and you're happy, you're on top of the world. Do you have adab? Because when you're in bast, you have to have adab. When you're in expansion, you have to have courtesy. And usually we get so carried away and so happy that we begin to speak things we should have never said. We begin to do things we never did, and then we go back down again. We go back into qabd. So, and again, you must know Allah Azza wa Jal in all of His beauty and all of His majesty. And you must know Him in terms of every beautiful name of His names. And He is a mani', the withholder. No, you don't get this. I want it. I need it. No, you don't get it. Oh, that's hard. You don't get it. He is the law. He is the harmer. Like your back hurts. My back really hurts. Your stomach pains that hurt you so much. It's like, I can't bear it. But can you bear it? Bear it. Take your medicine, of course, and other things. Get your remedies. But Can you pray now in the stomach pain? I'm not strong enough to do that. But may I be strong enough to do that? See, and that's why some of the great awliya were very afflicted. They had great sicknesses. And, I knew a saint of Allah who was 10 years before he died. He was a great wali of Allah. MashaAllah. Al-Hajj Mahmoud, he was also a Hanafi faqih, as you might like to know. Because he's an Eritrean. But in Eritrea, in Musawwa, on the coast, most of them are Hanafis. And he was a great Hanafi scholar. And he was a great wali of Allah. And he was in his bed, he couldn't move the last 10 years of his life, and in great pain. And people have to help him with wudu and everything. And yet, he's totally in ecstasy with Allah Azza wa Jal. And I would go visit him, and mashallah, he was so happy to see me, and we would talk and so forth. But he's in suffering to the day that he died. And he had to be treated like a baby. He couldn't do anything. But he was in ecstasy. Because it's like, Allah, you put this in me. You do to me whatever you want. And you take away from me. He's a refugee also. They had been a very wealthy family in Eritrea. They controlled the gold market. They were very honest people. And they made sure that in the gold market nothing goes wrong. Nobody's cheated. In the old Muslim world, you had these almost like guilds. That like, you have to do, if you're selling leather, you will do it right, or the guild will discipline you. And that's the way he was. And then like, the way women were in the market, it's got to be proper, nothing improper. And there are times we sell, there are times we don't sell. And they were a powerful family. He was a Sayyid too. He was a strong person. And he had a cane. He would hit people if they did things wrong. And then he's turned into a refugee. His family loses everything. A lot of his family are murdered and killed. And then they end up in the Hijaz, where the Hijazis would come to them before because they were poor in the 1930s. And they would give them anything. And then they go to the Hijaz and nobody knows them anymore. And, so may Allah enable us to worship Him in all states. It's a very good question. Alaikum salam.
My question is more, the other time you said that hearts make communities. My question is more in terms of how do you bring hearts that are from different backgrounds, different people, different opinion together? Because we live in a time, unfortunately, there's a lot of problems in our community. A lot of women are divorced, a lot of people are suffering, and we tend to wait for people to ask for help before going and helping. Or we tend to, unfortunately, if we're having a family dinner or couples get together, we want to invite the sisters who be divorced. We wait for those people to ask for help. So my question is, how do you bring hearts together that have...
How do you bring hearts together? That's a miracle, right? لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم. Had you, O Prophet, spent, if you had all the money, all the gold and silver in the earth, and you spent it, you would not have been able to bring their hearts together. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ أَلَّفَ بَيْنَهُمْ. But it was God, and only God, who brought their hearts together. So bringing hearts together is a miracle. It's a great miracle. And for the Prophet, it is a lasting miracle. And for us, it's also miraculous. It's a miraculous honor. So you pray for that. You work for that. And, if a person doesn't like you because they don't know you, or because you have a different ethnic background, or because you have a different social class, or education, or whatever, or because maybe they think you did something wrong, or you are something wrong, like you're not a real Muslim. Whatever the reason is, if it is not hasad, if it is not envy, and envy is the desire that whatever good you have be destroyed. Whether I get it or not. So you might see, a woman, who has envy of another woman. And she doesn't necessarily want to have that husband. She doesn't necessarily want to have that beauty. But she doesn't want her to have it. And she takes joy if she loses it. This is the pit of the pits. This is war against God. And this is the nature of Satan. And a lot of evil, the evil eye, and other things come out of that. So if the person is undisposed to you because of any misunderstanding or lack of knowledge or ethnic background or whatever, just be good to them. Just be good to them. Do ihsan. Speak to them nicely. And maybe you can help them sometimes. And be open to them. And look at them mercifully. And again, we are people who delight in being, inshallah, the people of the Sunnah and of the majority community and the people of the tradition. But we must not despise anyone else. And we must not look upon them as enemies. Because most of them don't know. Really, they don't know. They don't know what you believe. They don't even know what they believe in some cases. But they've been told things. And things have been packaged for them. And so it's like, you don't want to buttress that division. And if we can maybe win their ears to listen, then they will join what is really beneficial for them. So I think it's made, but pray and be good. And then again, the secret of the hearts coming together is that they already were. And I hope and pray that that's the case with everybody here, and everybody's over here when they are here. That we are people whose hearts were always together anyway. Because as the Prophet said, Al-arwahu junudun mujannada, that the spirits are marshaled, they are soldiers marshaled in troops. They're against evil, they do things. Famata, and that means in the other world, in the first world. And if we knew each other in that world, then we know each other here. That's one of the things that sheikh who was in the bed used to tell me. He said, I remember when we made tawaf together around the throne of God. He said, we did. He said, I remember that you and we did tawaf together around the throne of God. So that's why I love you, that's why you love me. So that's the great gift, and may we all be like that. See, so build the core of the community around the people who know each other. Like, I know you, you know me, we were this big, we were spirits. We went around the throne of God for thousands of years. We had no gender, we had no color, not like we have now, no ethnicity. And then we come into this world, and you are packed and packaged, in your form, your gender, your color, everything. And I never met you before, but it's like, don't I know you? And you meet a sister, and like, I've known you for a long time. No, we just met. And really, I've met people like that, like, I've known you forever. No, you don't. We just met. I've never been in that country. So these are people that وَمَا تَعَارَفْ, those who recognize each other, ائتلف. Their hearts are in harmony with each other. It's very easy to work with them. They will fight, they will disagree, but we can work everything out. Because we are brothers. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Only the believers are brothers. And it means sisters too. Whenever the word ukhuwa, brotherhood, or akh, or brother, is used, it always means sister as well, unless specifying otherwise. This is the way Arabic works. So ukhuwa is sisterhood also. So the believers are, only them are sisters and brothers. Because we have, and that was in a tribal society, where your tribal sister and brother is everything. You give your life for them. And we have this in a lot of tribes today in the Muslim world still. That the tribe is everything. Okay, you mean I'm not a brother in my tribe? No. Not if you know the believer. because the believer is the real brother and the real sister. But we have to realize that in ourselves, that if we are those believers who knew each other in that first creation, we will be real brothers and sisters here, and we will work together as long as we live, and we will give to each other, and we will learn for each other, and we will pray for each other, and we will care for each other, and that is the community that's in the hearts. And that is the community that comes out of the hearts, and then that community begins to attract others who you might say, without being arrogant or proud, were on the periphery, but they were there too. But they're further out. And so now they begin to come in. And then others begin to come in. And others begin to come in. So, may Allah show us that miracle in this time. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, may Allah bless him. He and I would often meet in pilgrimage or be in pilgrimage together many times. Or we'd meet at the beginning of the pilgrimage, and then we'd meet in Muzdalifah. He goes right through our camp. Hamza Yusuf, get it! 1998, he came to the pilgrimage, with these brothers and sisters from California. Had Sheikh Osama Khan, Mustafa Davis, big names. We could go on. And I had been out of the United States, at that time. I was in full 18 years, just gone, and I didn't intend to ever come back. I was very happy where I was. And so I got to where I didn't know anything about America. I didn't go there. And so Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was there, and I was with a sheikh named Shadli. He's a very great sheikh. He's still alive. And we were sitting in Masjid Khif. My other sheikh was actually quite sick that year. And so he said, go outside now and see Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. So I did. You don't say why. You don't do that with sheikhs. So I went out the door, and there was Sheikh Hamza Yusuf outside Masjid Khif. And I walked up and hugged him very hard, and he's like, what was this? And Dr. Omar. He would do crazy things like that. And then he took me to his camp in Mina, and there was Mustafa Davis. There was Osama Khan. There were these other people, Dr. Hisham Alusi, Allah bless him. And I was amazed, you got people like this in America? Because when I left America, there weren't even many Muslims there. And then I went back to Shadi, and I said, you should have seen these people with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. And he said, what's the secret? He said, do you know the secret of that? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, this is because Sheikh Hamza Yusuf has appeared. So all of these people who were with him in the other world before, who were doing tawaf with him, like Mustafa Davis, Osama Khan, they now recognize him and they come to him. So you have people like that too. You have people who are, as it were, like your spiritual children. So when you begin to work and you begin to be kind and merciful and beneficial, your children will come to you. And it might be, an old man, and it might be, a Chinese person, and it may be women, it may be men, it may be children. But they are people whose spirits know your spirit. And all of us are like that. So we draw the people into the community, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. And, may Allah keep our hearts together. And let our hearts grow together. And, this, again, is the best of all possible worlds. This is the way the test was meant to be. It would be so nice if just by having a good intention, we could have this huge center, and we have all of Toronto coming here every day, 24/7, studying and working, not having to go to jobs, and being able to have clinics, and being able to have, health services, and counseling, and permaculture, and everything, and self-sustenance. It doesn't work like that. It has to begin little and difficult and sacrifice. And this also selects out, you as a very special person, because you're here at this stage. If we begin to succeed, you'll get lots of people, because it becomes a powerful magnet. Really it does. Once you begin to create community, and that community is able to bring the hearts together, then you see how the da'wah works. Then you begin to get Canadians coming in much greater numbers. But you've got to be able to take care of them. So inshallah, Allah enable us to bring the hearts together.
I just have a question about women seekers of knowledge, because in this time there seems to be a lot less women seeking knowledge. Like a lot of them will say, well, they can't, they're too busy with work or children, and it goes on. But when we look at the past, historically, there are so many, and many examples in this time and historically. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what historically women scholars were like, and some examples that could inspire us to be better students.
First of all, a lot of people who work with men and women, they find that the greatest spirituality of all is with women. And in some of the books written about famous women, like Abdul Halim Abu Shaqqa, تحرير المرأة في عصر النبوة. It's a very nice book. And he also argues that the women among the Sahaba were often in the lead among the Sahaba. And he talks about things like the dynamic role of the Prophet's aunts, for example, who were really warriors, who stood by him. So often women take a dominant role. And it may happen that that will be in our community in the future for reasons like the spirituality of women and other reasons. For example, in Zaytuna, the enrollment is pretty much 50-50, but it may be even that the women are more than the men. Of course, one explanation for that is that in our culture, parents are often not happy for the boys to take professions that won't make money. And they don't mind so much in the case of the sisters. So you can find sisters who are very competent, who can actually take the curriculum, whereas a lot of males, their parents just won't let them do that. So that being the case, interestingly, it means that if these institutions can grow and survive, and we pray that they do, then we probably will have prominent female scholars. And that is our tradition. Our tradition is to have great female scholars. The great field where women prevailed was hadith. I mean, women muhaddiths were many, and they were often the greatest of the muhaddiths. And although the biographical dictionaries tell us about many men who were liars and fabricators of hadith, they don't give a single woman. So the women also had tremendous amana. And Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who, as you know, is one of the greatest of all the scholars, the master of hadith. And he took great joy in the fact that he had been able to get al-Bukhari from many channels, but especially from the channel of Karima bint Ahmed. Karima bint Ahmed she was the master of Bukhari. And if you got Bukhari from her, it's like you had it. In the Hanafi school, you probably know Al-Kashani. Al-Kashani is a great Hanafi scholar, and he writes the book Bada'i' as-Sana'i'. Bada'i' as-Sana'i', which is one of the greatest Hanafi works. And it is a Hanafi work that pays very close attention to the legal wisdom behind rulings. And his wife was Fatima as-Samarqandi, and she was from Halab. Her roots must go back to Samarkand because her name says that, Fatima as-Samarqandi, but she was from Halab. She was a Syrian. And she was regarded as the most intelligent person of her time and the greatest scholar of her time. And she was also regarded as the most beautiful woman of her time as well. She had everything. And princes would ask her to marry them. Kings would ask her to marry them. And she refused. But she married Al-Kashani because he wrote Bada'i as-Sana'i', which was a commentary on her father's work. Her father was also a great Hanafi faqih. And as long as Fatima's father was alive, and Al-Kashani gave fatwas, first of all, her father would sign the fatwa. Then Fatima would sign the fatwa. Then he would sign the fatwa. He would never sign it if the two didn't. And Fatima was really brilliant. And she was the counselor of Salah ad-Din. You know, she was an amazing woman. And people traveled from all the world to study from her. And to study hadith from her, and fiqh from her, and fatwa. And she made the ulama do certain things. Like she made them, commanded them. One of the things was to get all of the ulama in certain days in Ramadan to break fast with the poor in certain mosques, for example. Instead of, you have your beautiful houses and you have your wealth. No, we're going to break fast with the poor in the mosque, and you will come. And they didn't disobey Fatima Samarkandi. I mean, she comes from a powerful family. Her father's powerful. Kashani is too. She is too. And they don't want to disobey her. You know, so we have a lot of people like that in history. You know, Aisha, Allah be pleased with her. This brilliant woman. Brilliant woman. You know, the Prophet said, you know, take half of your deen from this Humayra, from this fair lady, this beautiful lady. And in Medina, you know, in the generation of the successors, you have what we call the 7 fuqaha. You know, the Maliki school goes back to Imam Malik, goes to his teachers, Imam al-Zuhri and others, Imam Nafi', and then it goes to the 7 fuqaha. These were regarded as the greatest fuqaha of their time. And Urwa ibn Zubayr and others. And they were all of them like the children of Aisha. Like she raised them as a mother. Metaphorically, you know, teaching them. They would all go to her. She schooled them. So the 7 fuqaha are essentially a tribute to Aisha. They didn't always agree with her, because Aisha has certain legal opinions that are unique. Sometimes Imam al-Shafi'i will follow Aisha, for example. But the 7 fuqaha all loved Aisha. She's like their mother. She's their spiritual guide. So the role of women is very important. And you may have heard me say this before. I never remember where I said things and when and who was there. But the role of the woman and the woman's voice is very important, because of the fact that we, as men and women, we get our character from our mothers. You know, it is your mother who made you who you are. It is also the other maternal figures in your family, like grandmothers, great-grandmothers, aunts who love you, and things like that. Because, you know, these are the people who make us human. These, you know, the mother nurses us, and she gives us in that things from herself that you don't imagine. She is the one who looks into your eyes when you nurse. She is the one who smiles at you. And the mother's smile is really important. That's what makes it possible for you to approach existence, this frightening world. Your mother's smile, really important. You've got to see that. And she is the one who tells you everything you know. And your grandmother. So why, if you have values, if you have principles, you got them from your mother, or you got them from a maternal figure. And there may be exceptions to that, but usually that's the way it works. So then when I grow older, I still benefit tremendously from the maternal voice, even if she's younger than I. And, you know, to hear a sheikha tell me knowledge, even though I may have heard the same thing from a man, is not the same, because it goes into a different place in my heart. And it's like hearing my mother. It's like hearing my grandmother, or my I had a great-great-great-grandmother. It's amazing woman. Her name was Maud Stevens. She was a teacher, and she was a beautiful woman. She was one of the first women elected to public office in Kansas. She carried a revolver in her purse. Kansas was territory, it was a difficult place, and she knew how to take care of herself, but she was a brilliant woman. And every time I would come out to western Kansas, where she lived, where my maternal relatives were, I had to spend at least a week or 2 weeks with her, whether I liked it or not. And sometimes I didn't like it because she ate Ralston hot cereal with canned milk for breakfast, and to me that was just, I can't say anything but like, I don't like this. And I can put all this sugar on it, it still doesn't taste right. That's what you're going to have for breakfast. She always had that, Ralston and canned milk. And, but she would sit down with me and she tells you about all these things. She belongs to the world. She was born the year Abraham Lincoln was shot. She had come west in a covered wagon, and she'd tell me all these stories. That's like in me to this day. And then also she was a woman of principle. And her husband was a judge. And my great-grandfather was a judge. I never got to see him, but he's really important in my life because she told me about him. And he was a man of principle. See, so that makes you a person of principle. And again, it's like the female voice is just really important. And this is done, of course, with dignity and with honor and properly. We are people who are honorable people, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But I think it's very important that women get knowledge. And when you get knowledge, you have to pay zakat. And the zakat of your knowledge is to teach it. You teach it to anyone who will listen to you. And you teach it to your friends. And I know sisters, some of them I met at the RIS last year. And this one sister would come to me, she's very gifted. She's very good at videos and things like that. And she's from California, or Washington State, I think she was from. But like she would just say that all these women come to me and they ask me about Islam. I'm not a scholar. I said, nonsense. How long have you been living as a Muslim? How many years have you fasted? How many years have you... Any question that these American women are going to ask about Islam, you can answer. You don't have to know. You don't have to have the a scholarly degree in Islam to tell people what you know. And also non-Muslims, they begin at a very elementary level. I remember when I became a Muslim at Cornell in 1970, and there were people who helped me. And one of the people who helped me was a Pakistani woman who was in graduate school there. And she was married, and she was studying something like home ed or something like that, homemaking, something like that, something very basic. And when I met her, it's like she could recite Qul huwallahu ahad. She could recite Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. I was really amazed. She knows Arabic. She doesn't really, but she could just recite it like you can too, probably. Very well. Probably maybe better than her. But I was astounded. And she was like a teacher for me. I remember when I got my name, Umar, I really wanted to be called Abu Bakr, but I was given the name Umar. And I happened to like Abu Bakr a little bit better. And so I crossed the gorge in Ithaca. There's a gorge, you take a little bridge across it. And that's where she lived over there. And she also had one of her great aunts with her from Pakistan, because she had her husband, she had a great aunt. And her great aunt was, I think, really pious. She must have been 90 years old or something, but, and then I just said, well, I have a name now, and it's Umar al-Faruq. And her grandmother just said, she began to cry, and her grandmother made dua, and she said, may Allah make you like Umar al-Faruq. And I said, okay, the name's all right. The name's okay. If you like it, it makes you cry, it's okay. I would rather than Abu Bakr, but Umar is okay. Inshallah, give what you've got, and Allah will give you more. La ilma bila amal. There is no there is no practice without knowledge. You have to know how to do things. وَلَا عَمَلْ بِلَا عِلْمٍ. وَلَا عِلْمُ بِلَا عَمَلٍ. And there is no knowledge without practice. If you don't practice your knowledge, it will fly away. You've got to practice it. And one of the best ways is to teach it. Me, like, what do I know? You're going to start teaching people. I can't answer their questions. Well, if you just start, Allah will give you what you need. But, you hold back because I don't know. I don't have the right knowledge. I need more knowledge. No, just get involved. من عمل بما علم أورثه الله علم ما لم يكن يعلم. من عمل بما علم أورثه الله علم ما لم يكن يعلم. Whoever will put into practice the knowledge that he or she has learned, God will give them as an inheritance the knowledge of what they didn't know. That's the key. Inshallah. May Allah make us people who benefit others. And again, you to any non-Muslim are a scholar beyond imagination. For us as Christians, if you went to church on Sunday, you were really special. And then you find these Muslims who pray Jummah every week. They never miss Jummah. And then what? He prays every day? It's like you're dealing with a whole new order of humanity. And people look up to you like a saint, and you are. You're a believer.
So it's 2:10.
Yeah, we have another appointment, and right? Yeah, so we're going to have to go. And pray for me, and I pray for you.